The phone rang at exactly 6:15 a.m., cutting through the silence of the modest apartment in Louisville, Kentucky. Marcus Williams wiped the sleep from his eyes as he reached for the device, knowing only one person would call this early. "Marcus, I need you at the gym by 7:30. We've got reporters coming today," came the familiar voice of Muhammad Ali, though it carried an unusual weight that morning. Marcus had been working as Ali's personal assistant and groundskeeper for 3 years now, ever since the boxing legend had noticed him fixing a broken fence at the training facility with nothing but determination and makeshift tools. What started as odd jobs had evolved into a position of trust. Marcus handled everything from maintaining Ali's properties to managing his daily schedule. "Of course, champ. Everything all right?" Marcus asked, sensing something different in his employer's tone. "Just need someone I can count on today," Ali replied before hanging up. Marcus dressed quickly in his usual work clothes, faded jeans and a plain grey t-shirt, and grabbed his worn leather jacket. His 15-year-old Honda Civic coughed to life in the parking lot of his apartment complex, a sound that reminded him daily of his financial reality. The morning air was crisp as he drove through downtown Louisville, past the Muhammad Ali Center where tourists were already gathering despite the early hour. Marcus had grown accustomed to living in the shadow of greatness, handling the mundane details that kept Ali's world running smoothly while the legend dealt with his increasingly public battle with Parkinson's disease. At the gym, Marcus found Ali sitting alone on a bench, staring at his hands. The tremor was more noticeable today, and Marcus felt that familiar pang of helplessness watching his hero struggle with the disease that was slowly stealing his voice and movement. "The reporters want to talk about legacy," Ali said without looking up, "about what I'm leaving behind." Marcus began organizing the equipment, giving Ali space to process whatever was weighing on him. "You've already left more behind than most people could in 10 lifetimes, champ." Ali smiled slightly. "You always know what to say, Marcus. That's why I trust you with everything." The interview went well, with Ali managing to speak clearly about his foundation work and his hopes for young boxers. Marcus stayed in the background, ensuring everything ran smoothly, invisible to the cameras but essential to the operation. After the reporters left, Ali pulled Marcus aside. "I need you to do something for me. My car's been making strange noises and I can't drive it safely anymore. Take it to Henderson Luxury Motors on Bardstown Road. Tell them to fix whatever's wrong and that Muhammad Ali sent you." Marcus felt uncomfortable with the request. Henderson Luxury Motors was the kind of place where cars cost more than most people's houses. "Champ, maybe I should call ahead, let them know I'm coming." "No need. Just tell them who sent you. They'll take care of everything." Marcus drove Ali's pristine 1997 Mercedes S-Class through the affluent Highlands neighborhood, feeling completely out of place. The car was worth more than Marcus made in 2 years, and he handled it like the precious cargo it was. Henderson Luxury Motors occupied a gleaming showroom on Bardstown Road with floor-to-ceiling windows displaying vehicles that seemed more like art pieces than transportation. Marcus parked carefully and walked through the main entrance, immediately feeling the weight of judgmental stares from the impeccably dressed sales staff. The showroom smelled of leather and expensive cologne. Classical music played softly in the background while well-heeled customers examined vehicles that cost 6 figures. Marcus approached the service counter where a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair looked him up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone suggesting she doubted it. "I need to get this car serviced," Marcus said, holding up the Mercedes keys. "Muhammad Ali asked me to bring it in." The woman's expression shifted to one of skepticism mixed with amusement. "Muhammad Ali? Right. And I suppose you're his personal mechanic?" "I'm his assistant. The car's been making unusual noises and he wants it checked out." A man in an expensive suit approached from behind the counter. His name tag read Brad Morrison, sales manager. He looked Marcus over with the same dismissive expression as his colleague. "Sir, this is a high-end establishment. We don't typically service vehicles for assistance," Brad said, emphasizing the last word like it left a bad taste in his mouth. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the chain shops down the street." Marcus felt his face flush with embarrassment, but he maintained his composure. "This is Muhammad Ali's car. He specifically asked me to bring it here." Brad laughed, a sound that carried across the showroom and drew attention from other customers and staff members. "Look, buddy, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but Muhammad Ali doesn't send his help to places like this. If he really needed service, he'd call ahead, or better yet, come himself." "He has Parkinson's disease," Marcus said quietly. "He can't drive safely anymore." "Sure he does," Brad replied sarcastically. "And I'm sure you're his best friend too. Listen, why don't you take your little story and your beat-up Honda outside and stop wasting our time?" Marcus looked around the showroom, noticing that conversations had stopped and people were staring. A security guard had positioned himself near the entrance, clearly ready to escort Marcus out, if necessary. "I'm telling you the truth," Marcus insisted, his voice steady despite the humiliation burning in his chest. "Muhammad Ali asked me to bring his car here for service." Brad's expression hardened. "Okay, I've had enough of this. Security, please escort this gentleman out. And sir," he turned back to Marcus, "if you come back here with more stories about being connected to celebrities, we'll call the police." The security guard, a large man with graying hair, approached Marcus with a sympathetic look. "Come on, son, time to go." Marcus walked toward the exit, feeling the eyes of everyone in the showroom following him. As he reached the door, he turned back to Brad Morrison. "You're making a mistake," he said simply. "The only mistake would be believing your ridiculous story," Brad replied loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Muhammad Ali's assistant. What's next? You're going to tell us you work for the president?" The laughter that followed Marcus out the door felt like physical blows. He sat in Ali's Mercedes for several minutes, gripping the steering wheel and trying to process what had just happened. He'd been humiliated, dismissed, and treated like a liar simply because of how he looked and dressed. His phone buzzed with a text from Ali. "How did it go at the dealership?" Marcus stared at the message, unsure how to respond. He could lie, tell Ali the car was being serviced, and find another way to get it fixed. But Ali trusted him with the truth, even when it was difficult. He drove back to Ali's house, a beautiful property in the East End that reflected the champion's success. Ali was waiting in his study, surrounded by photographs and memorabilia from his legendary career. "They didn't believe me," Marcus said simply. "They thought I was lying about working for you." Ali's expression darkened. "What exactly did they say?" Marcus recounted the entire encounter, watching as Ali's jaw tightened with each detail. When he finished, Ali was quiet for a long moment. 30 years I've been fighting for respect and dignity," Ali said finally. "Not just in the ring, but for everyone who's been judged by the color of their skin or the clothes on their back. And they treated you like that because you work for me? Champ, it's okay. I can take the car somewhere else." Ali shook his head slowly. "No, Marcus, it's not okay. It's never okay." He reached for his phone. What was the manager's name? Brad Morrison. Ali dialed a number from memory. "Hello, this is Muhammad Ali. I need to speak with the owner of Henderson Luxury Motors immediately." Marcus watched as Ali's expression grew more serious during the brief conversation. When he hung up, there was a determined look in his eyes that Marcus recognized from old fight footage. "We're going back," Ali announced. "Right now." "Champ, you don't need to do this. I can handle it." Ali stood up, moving with the careful deliberation that had become necessary since his diagnosis. "Marcus, you handle everything for me with dignity and respect. You deserve the same in return. Besides," a slight smile crossed his face, I haven't been to a good fight in years. The drive back to Henderson Luxury Motors was quiet, with Ali staring out the window at the city he'd called home his entire life. Marcus could see the wheels turning in the champion's mind, planning his approach like he once planned his strategy for opponents in the ring. "Pull right up to the front entrance," Ali instructed as they arrived. "And Marcus, hold your head high. You represent me, and I've never backed down from a fight." The moment they walked through the doors of Henderson Luxury Motors, the atmosphere changed completely. The same sales staff who had dismissed Marcus an hour earlier now stood frozen, recognizing the unmistakable figure of Muhammad Ali despite the effects of Parkinson's disease. Brad Morrison's face went pale as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. The security guard who had escorted Marcus out now looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. Ali moved slowly but purposefully toward the service counter, with Marcus walking beside him. The showroom fell completely silent, except for the soft classical music that suddenly seemed inappropriately cheerful. "I believe you met my assistant earlier," Ali said, his voice carrying the authority that had once commanded attention from presidents and kings. Despite the slight tremor, every word was clear and deliberate. Brad Morrison stumbled over his words, trying to form an apology that could somehow undo the humiliation he had inflicted. "Mr. Ali, he didn't what?" Ali interrupted. "He didn't deserve to be treated with respect. He didn't deserve to be believed when he told you the truth." The owner of the dealership, Robert Henderson, emerged from his office, having been alerted by his staff. He was a man in his 60s who clearly recognized both the business and public relations disaster unfolding in his showroom. "Mr. Ali, I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding," Henderson began, but Ali raised his hand to stop him. "This wasn't a misunderstanding," Ali said firmly. "This was prejudice. Your employee looked at my assistant and decided he wasn't worthy of basic human decency." Marcus watched as Ali commanded the room with the same presence that had made him a global icon. Every person in the showroom was hanging on his words, understanding they were witnessing something significant. "Marcus Williams has been with me for 3 years," Ali continued. "He manages my properties, coordinates my schedule, and handles responsibilities that would challenge most executives. He came here on my behalf, told you the truth, and was humiliated for it." Brad Morrison looked like he might be sick. "Sir, I made a terrible mistake. I'm so sorry." Ali turned his attention to the sales manager. "You laughed at him. You had him escorted out like a criminal. You made assumptions based on his appearance and decided he was lying." The silence in the showroom was deafening. Other customers had stopped pretending to look at cars and were openly watching the confrontation unfold. "What would you like us to do?" Henderson asked quietly. Ali looked around the showroom, taking in the faces of everyone present. "I want you to understand something. Marcus represents me everywhere he goes. When you disrespect him, you disrespect me. When you treat him like he doesn't matter, you're saying I don't matter." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. "But more importantly, you're perpetuating the same prejudices I've spent my entire life fighting against." Marcus felt a surge of pride watching Ali defend him, but also a deep sadness that such a defense was necessary. He thought about all the times he'd been judged, dismissed, or treated as less than human simply because of his appearance or economic status. "Mr. Morrison," Ali addressed the sales manager directly, "I want you to personally service my car. I want you to treat Marcus with the same respect you'd show me, and I want you to remember this moment the next time someone walks through your doors who doesn't look like your typical customer." Brad Morrison nodded frantically. "Yes, sir, absolutely. Whatever you need." Ali wasn't finished. "I also want you to know that Marcus has my complete authority to make decisions regarding all my vehicles. If he comes here again, you'll treat him like the professional he is." Henderson stepped forward. "Mr. Ali, we'll make this right. Your car will receive our best service, and Mr. Williams will always be welcome here. Ali nodded slowly. See that he is. Because if I hear about another incident like this, I'll make sure everyone in Louisville knows how Henderson Luxury Motors treats people. The threat was delivered calmly, but everyone understood its implications. Muhammad Ali's word carried weight in Louisville and far beyond. As they prepared to leave the car for service, Ali turned to address the entire showroom. Let me tell you something about respect. It's not earned by the car you drive or the clothes you wear. It's earned by how you treat others, especially those who can't fight back. He looked directly at Marcus. This man has more integrity in his little finger than most people have in their entire bodies. He deserves your respect, not because he works for me, but because he's a human being. The applause started slowly, with one customer clapping, then another, until the entire showroom was acknowledging Ali's words. Marcus felt tears threatening to spill, overwhelmed by the public vindication and Ali's unwavering support. As they waited for a ride back to Ali's house, the champion placed a trembling hand on Marcus's shoulder. You okay? Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice to remain steady. Thank you, champ. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, Ali replied firmly. That's what we do for family. The word hit Marcus like a physical blow. Family. In 3 years of working for Ali, he'd never heard the champion use that term to describe their relationship. You've been more than an employee, Marcus. You've been loyal, honest, and dedicated. You've helped me maintain my dignity during the hardest period of my life. That makes you family. As they rode back to Ali's house, in the luxury sedan Henderson had provided, Marcus reflected on the morning's events. He'd experienced humiliation and vindication within the span of a few hours, but more importantly, he'd witnessed the power of standing up for what's right. Champ, Marcus said as they pulled into Ali's driveway, what you did back there, that's going to change how they treat people. Ali smiled, the tremor in his hands seeming less pronounced. That's the point, Marcus. Every fight matters, even the ones outside the ring. That evening, Marcus received a call from Robert Henderson personally apologizing and informing him that Brad Morrison had been terminated. The dealership was also implementing new customer service training focused on treating all customers with dignity and respect. But the real victory wasn't the apology or the firing. It was the knowledge that Ali had seen him as worthy of defending, as family worth fighting for. Marcus looked at his reflection in the bathroom mirror of his modest apartment, seeing himself differently than he had that morning. He was still the same person, in the same clothes, living in the same place, but something fundamental had changed. He was Muhammad Ali's family, and that meant he was worthy of respect, regardless of what anyone else thought. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Ali's house to find the champion sitting in his study, reading newspaper coverage of the incident at Henderson Luxury Motors. The story had made local news, with headlines focusing on Ali's defense of his employee. You're famous, Ali said with a grin, holding up the Louisville Courier-Journal. Marcus read the headline, Ali defends assistant in luxury car dealership confrontation. The article painted him in a positive light, describing him as a dedicated employee who had been unfairly treated. How do you feel about being in the spotlight? Ali asked. Marcus considered the question carefully. Honestly, I'm glad the story got out. Maybe it'll make other people think twice before they judge someone based on appearances. Ali nodded approvingly. That's exactly right. Sometimes the most important fights happen when nobody's expecting them. The phone rang, and Ali gestured for Marcus to answer it. The caller was a reporter from CNN wanting to interview both Ali and Marcus about the incident and its broader implications for how service industry workers treat customers. What do you think? Ali asked after Marcus relayed the request. I think we should do it, Marcus replied without hesitation. If our story can help even one person avoid what I went through, it's worth it. Ali's smile was proud. "That's my boy. Set it up." The CNN interview was scheduled for the following week, giving Marcus time to prepare for his first national television appearance. Ali worked with him on his talking points, helping him articulate the broader message about dignity and respect. "Remember," Ali coached, "this isn't about revenge or making Henderson Luxury Motors look bad. It's about changing hearts and minds." Marcus practiced his responses, focusing on the positive aspects of the experience: Ali's loyalty, the dealership's commitment to change, and the opportunity to raise awareness about prejudice in everyday interactions. The day of the interview, Marcus wore his best suit, a navy blue ensemble Ali had insisted on buying for him. As they sat in Ali's study waiting for the CNN crew to arrive, Marcus felt nervous but determined. "You ready for this?" Ali asked. Marcus straightened his tie and nodded. "Ready, champ." The interview went better than Marcus had hoped. The reporter, a seasoned journalist named Sarah Chen, asked thoughtful questions that allowed both Ali and Marcus to share their perspectives on the incident and its aftermath. "What did you learn from this experience?" Chen asked Marcus near the end of the interview. Marcus thought for a moment before responding. "I learned that dignity isn't something you can take from someone else. It's something you carry inside yourself, and I learned that having someone believe in you can change everything." Ali reached over and squeezed Marcus's shoulder, a gesture that was captured by the cameras and would later become one of the most shared moments from the interview. After the CNN crew left, Ali and Marcus sat in comfortable silence, both processing the significance of what they'd just shared with the world. "You did good today," Ali said finally. "We did good," Marcus corrected. "This was a team effort." Ali laughed, a sound that had become rarer as his condition progressed. "You're right, we make a good team." That evening, Marcus returned to his apartment with a sense of accomplishment he'd never experienced before. He'd stood up for himself on national television, shared his story with millions of people, and hopefully made a difference in how others would be treated. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Saw you on CNN. Your story inspired me to speak up when I was treated poorly at a restaurant today. Thank you for your courage. Jennifer from Phoenix." It was the first of dozens of similar messages Marcus would receive over the following days. People from across the country reached out to share their own experiences with discrimination and to thank him for bringing attention to an issue many faced but few discussed publicly. Marcus realized that his humiliation at Henderson Luxury Motors had been transformed into something powerful, a platform for change and a voice for those who often went unheard. As he prepared for bed that night, Marcus reflected on how dramatically his life had changed in just a few days. He was still Muhammad Ali's assistant, still lived in the same modest apartment, still drove the same aging Honda Civic. But he was also now a symbol of dignity and resilience, proof that every person deserves respect regardless of their circumstances. The last thing Marcus did before falling asleep was write a thank you note to Ali, expressing his gratitude not just for the job, but for treating him like family and showing him that his worth wasn't determined by others' perceptions. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but Marcus faced them with the confidence that comes from knowing you're valued and respected by someone who matters. He was Muhammad Ali's family, and that was something no one could ever take away from him. 3 weeks after the CNN interview aired, Marcus's life had taken an unexpected turn. The story had resonated far beyond what anyone anticipated, generating thousands of comments, shares, and messages from people who had experienced similar treatment. Major news outlets picked up the story, and Marcus found himself fielding interview requests from across the country. But the most significant change came from an unexpected source. Robert Henderson, the owner of Henderson Luxury Motors, had called Ali personally with a proposition that would alter Marcus's trajectory forever. "He wants to offer you a position," Ali explained as they sat in his study on a rainy Thursday morning. "Director of Customer Relations and Community Outreach. It's a newly created position, and it comes with a substantial salary increase." Marcus stared at Ali, processing the information. "He wants to hire me. After what happened?" "Because of what happened," Ali corrected. Henderson realized that your experience, your perspective, and your ability to connect with people could help transform his business. He's serious about change, Marcus, and he wants you to lead it. The offer was generous, more than double what Marcus currently earned, plus benefits and a company car. It would mean leaving Ali's employ, something Marcus had never seriously considered. "What do you think I should do, champ?" Ali was quiet for a long moment, his hands trembling slightly as he considered his response. "I think you should take it." Marcus felt his heart sink. "You want me to leave?" "I want you to grow," Ali replied firmly. "You've been taking care of me for 3 years, Marcus. It's time for you to take care of yourself. This is an opportunity to make real change, to ensure that what happened to you doesn't happen to others." The weight of the decision pressed down on Marcus. Working for Ali had given his life meaning and purpose. The thought of leaving felt like abandoning family. "Besides," Ali continued with a slight smile, "I'm not going anywhere. You'll still be in Louisville, and I'll still need someone to keep me honest. This just means you'll be doing it from a position of real influence." That afternoon, Marcus drove to Henderson Luxury Motors for a meeting with Robert Henderson. The same showroom that had been the site of his humiliation now felt different. The staff members who had witnessed his confrontation with Brad Morrison greeted him respectfully, and several approached to personally apologize for their earlier behavior. Henderson's office was spacious and elegantly appointed, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Bardstown Road. The man himself was in his early 60s, with graying hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything. "Marcus, thank you for coming," Henderson said, rising from behind his desk to shake hands. "I want to start by apologizing again for what happened in my showroom. It was inexcusable, and it forced me to take a hard look at the culture we'd created here." Marcus settled into a leather chair across from Henderson's desk. "I appreciate that, Mr. Henderson, but I'm more interested in what you plan to do moving forward." Henderson smiled approvingly. Straight to the point. "I like that. Here's what I'm proposing. I want to create a position that doesn't currently exist in the luxury automotive industry, Director of Customer Relations and Community Outreach. Your job would be to ensure that every person who walks through our doors is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their background or appearance." He handed Marcus a detailed job description. "You'd oversee customer service training, develop community partnerships, and serve as our liaison with local organizations. You'd also have the authority to address any customer complaints personally and implement changes to prevent future incidents." Marcus read through the document, impressed by the scope and responsibility of the proposed role. "This is comprehensive, but why me? I don't have experience in automotive sales or corporate management." "You have something more valuable," Henderson replied. "You have credibility. When you speak about dignity and respect, people listen because you've lived it. You've experienced both sides of this equation, being dismissed and being defended. That perspective is exactly what we need." The salary figure at the bottom of the page made Marcus's eyes widen. It was more money than he'd ever imagined earning, enough to move out of his modest apartment and perhaps even buy a house. "There's one more thing," Henderson added. "I want you to know that this isn't charity or a publicity stunt. I'm offering you this position because I believe you can help us become a better company. But I also want you to understand that you'll be under scrutiny. Some people will assume you only got this job because of the media attention." Marcus appreciated Henderson's honesty. "I can handle scrutiny. What I can't handle is being part of a system that treats people the way I was treated." "That's exactly why I want you here," Henderson said. "So what do you think?" Marcus looked out the window at the busy street below, watching people go about their daily lives. How many of them had experienced what he'd gone through? How many had been dismissed, humiliated, or treated as less than human because of their appearance or circumstances? "I'll take the position," Marcus said, "but I have some conditions." Henderson raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "First, I want to implement a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior. Any employee who treats a customer disrespectfully based on their appearance, race, or economic status should face immediate consequences." "Agreed." "Second, I want to establish partnerships with local community organizations to ensure that people from all backgrounds feel welcome here. That might mean hosting financial literacy workshops, partnering with job training programs, or sponsoring community events." Henderson nodded. "That's exactly the kind of thinking we need." "And third," Marcus continued, "I want to create a customer advocacy program. If someone feels they've been treated unfairly, they should have a direct line to report it and know that their concerns will be taken seriously." "Done," Henderson said without hesitation. "Anything else?" Marcus thought for a moment. "I want to start in 2 weeks. I need time to properly transition my responsibilities with Mr. Ali and make sure he's taken care of." Henderson extended his hand. "Welcome to Henderson Luxury Motors, Marcus. I think this is going to be the beginning of something special." That evening, Marcus returned to Ali's house to share the news. The champion was in his study, reading letters from fans who had been inspired by their CNN interview. "How did it go?" Ali asked, looking up from a particularly moving letter from a young woman in Detroit. "I took the job," Marcus announced. "But I negotiated some conditions that I think you'd approve of." Ali's smile was proud and sad at the same time. "Tell me about them." Marcus outlined his conditions, watching as Ali's expression grew more animated with each detail. When he finished, Ali was nodding approvatively. "You're going to change that place," Ali said with conviction. "More importantly, you're going to change how people think about respect and dignity in business." "I learned from the best," Marcus replied. "You showed me that every fight matters, even the ones that happen outside the ring." Ali stood up slowly and walked to a bookshelf lined with awards and memorabilia from his boxing career. He selected a small framed photograph and handed it to Marcus. The photo showed Ali and Marcus together at a community event the previous year. Ali's arm was around Marcus's shoulders, and both men were smiling genuinely at the camera. "I want you to keep this on your desk," Ali said. "To remember that you're not just representing Henderson Luxury Motors, you're representing everyone who's ever been counted out, dismissed, or told they don't belong." Marcus felt tears threatening to spill as he looked at the photograph. "I won't let you down, champ." "You couldn't if you tried," Ali replied firmly. "Your family, Marcus. That doesn't change because you're changing jobs." Marcus's first day at Henderson Luxury Motors began at 7:30 a.m. with a staff meeting in the showroom. Every employee was present, from sales associates to mechanics to administrative staff. The atmosphere was tense, with many people unsure what to expect from their new director of customer relations. Marcus stood before the group wearing the same navy suit Ali had bought him for the CNN interview. He looked out at the faces before him, recognizing some from his humiliating experience weeks earlier. "Good morning," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the showroom. "I know this situation is unusual. 3 weeks ago, I was escorted out of this building. Today, I'm here as your colleague and, in some cases, your supervisor." He paused, letting that reality sink in. "I'm not here for revenge or to make anyone's life difficult. I'm here because Mr. Henderson and I share a vision of what this company can become, a place where every customer is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their background. A sales associate named Jennifer raised her hand. What exactly will your role involve? I'll be overseeing customer service training, developing community partnerships, and ensuring that incidents like the one I experienced never happen again, Marcus explained. But more than that, I'll be working with each of you to create an environment where excellent customer service isn't just a policy, it's a culture. Over the following weeks, Marcus threw himself into his new role with the same dedication he'd shown working for Ali. He implemented comprehensive customer service training that focused not just on sales techniques, but on recognizing and overcoming unconscious bias. The training sessions were eye-opening for many employees. Marcus shared his own experience, but also brought in speakers from different backgrounds to discuss their perspectives on customer service and respect. The goal isn't to make you feel guilty, Marcus explained during one session. It's to make you aware. We all have unconscious biases. The difference is whether we let those biases control our actions or whether we choose to treat every person who walks through our doors as a valued customer. The community outreach programs Marcus developed began to change Henderson Luxury Motors' reputation in Louisville. He partnered with local high schools to offer automotive career workshops, worked with financial institutions to provide car-buying education seminars, and established a scholarship program for students pursuing automotive technology degrees. One of Marcus's most successful initiatives was the Community Appreciation Days, monthly events where the dealership opened its doors to local organizations, offering free car maintenance clinics and educational workshops. These events drew diverse crowds and helped break down the barriers that had previously made the dealership feel exclusive and unwelcoming. 6 months into his new role, Marcus received a call that would test everything he'd worked to build. A young Hispanic man named Carlos Mendoza had filed a complaint alleging that he'd been discriminated against by one of the sales associates. Marcus met with Carlos personally, listening carefully to his account of being ignored by sales staff, and eventually told that he probably couldn't afford anything on the lot. The incident had occurred despite all the training and policy changes Marcus had implemented. "I'm sorry this happened to you," Marcus told Carlos. "This is exactly the kind of behavior we've been working to eliminate." Marcus conducted a thorough investigation, reviewing security footage and interviewing witnesses. The evidence clearly showed that Carlos had been treated dismissively by sales associate Tom Bradley, who had made assumptions based on Carlos's age and appearance. The decision to terminate Tom Bradley was difficult but necessary. Marcus had worked with Tom during the training sessions and believed the man was capable of change. But the zero-tolerance policy he'd negotiated was clear, and Marcus knew that making exceptions would undermine everything he'd worked to build. "I understand you're disappointed," Marcus told Tom during their final meeting, "but our customer's dignity isn't negotiable. Carlos Mendoza deserved the same respect we'd show any other customer, and you failed to provide that." Today, Tom's termination sent a clear message throughout the dealership that the new policies weren't just suggestions, they were requirements. Customer service scores improved dramatically, and the dealership began receiving positive reviews specifically praising the respectful treatment customers received. The success of Marcus's programs caught the attention of other luxury car dealerships across the country. He began receiving invitations to speak at industry conferences about implementing customer service reforms and building inclusive business cultures. During one particularly memorable conference in Chicago, Marcus shared the stage with business leaders from Fortune 500 companies. As he looked out at the audience of executives and entrepreneurs, he thought about how far he'd come from that humiliating morning at Henderson Luxury Motors. "Respect isn't a luxury item," Marcus told the audience. "It doesn't cost extra, and it doesn't require special training. It just requires recognizing that every person who walks through your doors is a human being deserving of dignity. The speech received a standing ovation, and Marcus was approached afterward by several executives interested in implementing similar programs at their companies. But the moment that meant the most to Marcus came during a quiet evening at Ali's house, 8 months after he'd started his new job. The champion had been following Marcus's progress closely, reading every article and watching every interview. "You know what I'm proudest of?" Ali asked as they sat in his study. "What's that, champ?" "You didn't let what happened to you make you bitter. You used it to make things better for other people. That's the mark of a true champion." Marcus felt the familiar warmth that came from Ali's approval. "I had a good teacher." "You had the heart for it all along," Ali corrected. "I just helped you see it." As Marcus prepared to leave that evening, Ali handed him an envelope. "Open it when you get home." Back in his apartment, a much nicer place he'd been able to afford thanks to his new salary, Marcus opened the envelope to find a handwritten letter from Ali. "Marcus," it read, "watching you transform your pain into purpose has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. You've shown that true strength isn't about how hard you can hit, but about how you respond when life hits you. You've made me proud to call you family, and I know you'll continue to make a difference in ways neither of us can imagine. Keep fighting the good fight. Your champion, Muhammad Ali." Marcus read the letter 3 times before carefully placing it in a frame next to the photograph Ali had given him on his first day at Henderson Luxury Motors. 1 year after starting his new position, Marcus was promoted to Vice President of Customer Experience and Community Relations. His programs had not only transformed Henderson Luxury Motors, but had become a model for other businesses throughout Louisville and beyond. The dealership's customer satisfaction scores were the highest in the region, and their community involvement had earned recognition from the Louisville Metro government and several local organizations. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. Carlos Mendoza, the young man whose discrimination complaint had tested Marcus's policies, returned to the dealership not as a complainant, but as a customer. "I saved up for 2 years, Carlos told Marcus as he signed the paperwork for a certified pre-owned sedan. "I wanted to buy my first car from a place that treats people right." Marcus watched as Carlos drove off the lot in his new car, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction that had nothing to do with the sale and everything to do with the principle it represented. That evening, Marcus called Ali to share the news about Carlos's purchase. The champion's voice was weaker than it had been a year earlier, but his enthusiasm was unmistakable. "That's what it's all about," Ali said. "One person at a time, one interaction at a time. You're changing the world, Marcus." "We're changing the world," Marcus corrected, just as he had so many times before. As Marcus reflected on his journey from that humiliating morning to his current position of influence and respect, he realized that the most important lesson hadn't been about business or customer service. It had been about the power of standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. The young man who had been escorted out of Henderson Luxury Motors for telling the truth had become a leader, an advocate, and a symbol of the change that's possible when people refuse to accept discrimination as normal. Marcus's story had inspired countless others to speak up when they witnessed unfair treatment, to demand better from businesses, and to recognize their own worth regardless of others' perceptions. But more than anything, it had proven that dignity and respect aren't privileges to be earned. They're rights to be protected, one interaction at a time. As Marcus prepared for another day of work, another opportunity to make a difference, he carried with him the knowledge that he was living proof of Muhammad Ali's most important lesson. The greatest victories happen not in the ring, but in the moments when we choose to fight for what's right. The phone call that would change everything came on a Tuesday morning in March. Marcus was reviewing customer feedback reports when his assistant informed him that Muhammad Ali was on the line. "Marcus," Ali's voice was weaker than usual, "I need you to come over. There's something important we need to discuss." Marcus arrived at Ali's house to find the champion sitting in his study, surrounded by legal documents and family photographs. The tremor in his hands was more pronounced, and Marcus could see the toll that Parkinson's was taking on his hero. "Sit down, son," Ali said, gesturing to the familiar chair across from his desk. "I've been doing some thinking about legacy, about what I want to leave behind." Marcus settled into the chair, sensing the gravity of the moment. "You know I've been working on my foundation, trying to ensure it continues after I'm gone," Ali continued. "I want you to be part of that. I want you to serve on the board of directors." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the honor. "Champ, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Ali replied with a slight smile. "You've already proven you can take principles and turn them into action. The foundation needs someone who understands that fighting for justice doesn't end when the cameras stop rolling." The Muhammad Ali Foundation focused on promoting respect, hope, and understanding while inspiring others to be their best selves. Serving on its board would mean helping to guide programs that reached young people around the world. "What would my role be?" Marcus asked. "You'd oversee our youth development programs and help us expand our work in promoting tolerance and respect," Ali explained. "It's perfect for you, Marcus. You've already been doing this work at Henderson Motors. Now you can do it on a global scale." Marcus accepted the position immediately, understanding that it represented not just an honor, but a responsibility to carry forward Ali's message long after the champion was gone. The board appointment was announced at a press conference the following week, with Ali personally introducing Marcus as a young man who embodies the values this foundation represents. The media coverage was extensive, with many outlets noting the full-circle nature of Marcus's journey from humiliated employee to foundation board member. Working with the Muhammad Ali Foundation opened new doors for Marcus's advocacy work. He began traveling internationally, speaking at conferences, and working with organizations dedicated to promoting human rights and dignity. During a trip to South Africa, Marcus visited schools in townships outside Cape Town, sharing his story with young people who faced their own challenges with discrimination and limited opportunities. "Your circumstances don't define your worth," Marcus told a group of teenagers in Soweto. "I was judged by the clothes I wore and the car I drove, but I didn't let that judgment become my reality. You have the power to write your own story." The response from the students was overwhelming. Many approached Marcus afterward to share their own experiences with prejudice and to thank him for showing them that change was possible. Back in Louisville, Marcus's work at Henderson Luxury Motors continued to evolve. The dealership had become a case study in corporate transformation, with business schools sending students to observe their customer service practices and community engagement programs. Marcus was invited to teach a guest lecture at the University of Louisville's Business School, where he shared his experience with a classroom full of future business leaders. "The most important lesson I can teach you," Marcus told the students, "is that how you treat people when you think nobody's watching reveals who you really are. Every interaction is an opportunity to either build someone up or tear them down." One student raised her hand. "What advice would you give to someone who witnesses discrimination but isn't sure how to respond?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Speak up. It doesn't have to be confrontational, but silence in the face of injustice is complicity. If you see someone being treated unfairly, find a way to intervene. Sometimes that means speaking directly to the person causing harm, sometimes it means supporting the victim, and sometimes it means reporting the incident to someone who can take action." The lecture was recorded and later shared online, where it was viewed by thousands of people and sparked discussions about bystander responsibility and corporate ethics. As Marcus's influence grew, he never forgot the lessons Ali had taught him about humility and service. Despite his success, he continued to live modestly, using his platform to amplify others' voices rather than seeking personal glory. One of his most meaningful initiatives was the creation of a mentorship program that paired successful professionals with young people from underserved communities. The program, called Champions for Change, provided guidance, support, and opportunities for youth who might otherwise lack access to professional networks. Marcus personally mentored several young people through the program, including a teenager named Jamal, who had been written off by teachers and counselors as a troublemaker. Under Marcus's guidance, Jamal discovered a passion for automotive technology and eventually earned a scholarship to study mechanical engineering. "You saw something in me that nobody else did," Jamal told Marcus at his high school graduation. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Marcus watched with pride as Jamal walked across the stage to receive his diploma, knowing that the young man would go on to achieve great things. It was moments like these that reminded Marcus why his work mattered. The final chapter of Marcus's transformation came 3 years after he joined the Muhammad Ali Foundation board. Ali's health had continued to decline, and Marcus found himself spending more time at the champion's side, helping to manage his affairs and ensure his comfort. During one of their last meaningful conversations, Ali reflected on the impact Marcus had made since that difficult day at Henderson Luxury Motors. "You know what I realized?" Ali said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That day when you were humiliated, it wasn't the end of your story. It was the beginning. Everything that's happened since then, all the lives you've touched, all the changes you've made, none of it would have been possible without that moment." Marcus held Ali's trembling hand, understanding the profound truth in his words. "You're saying that the worst day of my life led to the best things in my life." "I'm saying that champions aren't made in moments of triumph," Ali replied. "They're made in moments of adversity, when they choose to fight back, not with anger, but with purpose." When Muhammad Ali passed away peacefully in his sleep 6 months later, Marcus was among the pallbearers at his funeral. As he helped carry the casket of the man who had changed his life, Marcus reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him to this moment. The scared, humiliated young man who had been escorted out of a car dealership had become a respected business leader, foundation board member, and advocate for human dignity. But more importantly, he had become living proof that every person has the potential for greatness, regardless of their circumstances. In his eulogy for Ali, Marcus spoke about the champion's greatest victory, not any of his boxing triumphs, but his ability to see worth in others when they couldn't see it in themselves. "Muhammad Ali taught me that respect isn't something you demand," Marcus said to the thousands gathered to honor the champion. "It's something you give. And when you give it freely to others, especially those who society overlooks, you create a legacy that lasts forever." Today, Marcus Williams serves as CEO of the Muhammad Ali Foundation, continuing the champion's work of promoting respect, hope, and understanding around the world. The Foundation's programs reach millions of young people annually, teaching them that their worth isn't determined by others' perceptions, but by their own actions and character. Henderson Luxury Motors, under Marcus's continued influence as a board member, has become a model for inclusive business practices. The company's customer service training program, developed by Marcus, is now used by businesses across multiple industries. But perhaps Marcus's greatest achievement is the ripple effect of his story. Countless individuals have been inspired by his journey to speak up against discrimination, to treat others with dignity, and to recognize their own worth regardless of their circumstances. The young man who was once told he didn't belong in a luxury car dealership now owns 3 successful businesses, serves on multiple non-profit boards, and has been recognized by the President of the United States for his contributions to civil rights and community development. Yet Marcus still drives past Henderson Luxury Motors every morning on his way to work, remembering the lesson that changed his life: that our lowest moments can become the foundation for our greatest triumphs, if we choose to respond with courage, dignity, and an unwavering commitment to making the world a better place for everyone.